The assay we're doing today is called the Paracetamol Assay. This is a common assay used to measure the levels of paracetamol in plasma. The steps are outlined in the practical manual. The first steps involve weighing out paracetamol using the weighing balance as you've used before. Secondly, it involves making a stock solution of known concentration. It'll then involve you adding a compound called trichloroacetic acid. This compound is commonly used to remove proteins from the serum or plasma that would normally be found in blood during the assay. It is then mixed with a compound called sodium nitrite, and this is in order to develop the colour of when it's actually read by the spectrophotometer. And finally then sodium hydroxide is added to this. These series of steps are outlined in your practical manual. You will be asked to construct a standard curve and to estimate the concentration of an unknown. The first step in the practical involves weighing out the paracetamol. For this you're going to carry out as before at the weighing balance. The first step is to put the weigh boat onto the actual balance and hit the tare 0 button. This will go back to 0.00. You'll then add the paracetamol slowly using the spatula. Once the 100 milligrams have been added, the weigh boat is then taken off the weighing balance and it's added to the 10 mils of water in your square boat container. The paracetamol is added to the water. Once all of it has been added, then a distilled water wash bottle is used to wash in any remaining paracetamol left in the weigh boat. The cap on the container then is added and closed and sealed and brought over then to the vortex to mix for 10 minutes. Once the paracetamol solution has been vortexed, it can then be added to the volumetric flask in order to make the stock solution. A funnel is added and the solution is poured slowly into the volumetric flask. This is 100 mils volumetric flask as before. Once the solution is added, it can then be washed out with a wash bottle to make sure all of the paracetamol is added to the actual volumetric flask. Once this has been done, water from a beaker can be then poured into the volumetric flask until it's just short of the mark. Water can then be added dropwise using the wash bottle. Until it reaches the meniscus of the 100 ml mark. The mark is reached once the bottom of the meniscus hits the line on the actual volumetric flask. The stopper can then be put into the volumetric flask and inverted several times in order to ensure good mixing of the actual solution. For the next part of the practical, you will be asked to make a series of standards from your stock solution. These standards are labelled inside in your practical manual. You'll be asked to fill this out prior to the practical. You will see that the first standard is 0, which involves 0 microliters of the stock solution and 1000 microliters of water. The first thing you'll need to do is label a set of Eppendorfs. The next part of the practical involves making a series of standards from your stock solution. For this, you're going to label a set of Eppendorf tubes according to your practical manual. Suggestion would be to label it 0, 100, 200, 300, 400, etc. A table of your standards is labeled, has been put into your practical manual, and the first one of these has been labelled. This is the 0 micrograms per mil stock standard solution, and for this you will need to add 0 microliters of the stock solution A and 1000 microliters of distilled water. For the next standard, which is 100 microliters, you will be required to add 100 microliters of stock solution, which is 1 mg per mil, and 900 microliters of water. So for this you'll need to pipette in 100 microliters of the paracetamol solution, some of which has been poured into a smaller container just for ease of use. And for this you're going to need a P200 pipette, which has 100 microliters set on its dial. So 100 microliters is going to be pipetted into the 100 microliters Eppendorf tube. To this then 900 microliters of water will be added. This is going to be done using a P1000, and 900 microliters has been marked on the dial. Standards should be mixed carefully using a pipetting up and down, and then finally using a vortex. You will need to complete the table for your standard solutions into your practical manual and transfer this into your lab copy. For the further members of this series of standards, you'll be required to write down the number of microliters of the stock solution and the number of microliters of distilled water. Each of these should be mixed thoroughly and then vortex before. For the next step, you're going to be asked to label a second set of pipettes, each one corresponding to the previous standard. So the 100 microliter second tube is labelled with 100 microliters corresponding to the first standard tube. For this step you're going to be pipetting in 100 microliters of the standard that you've just made into the new tube, and to it you're going to add 1000 microliters or 1 ml of the trichloroacetic acid or TCA solution on your bench. So 100 microliters is added using a P200, and it's pipetted carefully into the 100 tube second set of tubes. And to this you're going to add 1000 microliters using a P1000 of the TCA solution. As mentioned at the start, the TCA solution would normally be used if it was plasma that was being used, as the TCA removes the plasma proteins that can interfere with the detection of the paracetamol in blood. The next step involves adding 300 microliters of a sodium nitrite solution that you'll find on your bench. So 300 microliters requires you to use the P1000 pipette, and this 300 microliters is added to the second set of tubes that have just had the TCA added to them. You'll then close the cap and vortex the tube. and leave it on your bench then for 20 minutes.